And I am Megan Kahn.
And we are here today with Dr. Schwan.
Hello.
So tell us about your undergrad experience. Why did you decide to pursue a career as a high school English teacher?
I graduated from SDSU in 2002 with an English and Spanish degree. I originally wanted to be a writer, and throughout that line I kind of decided that teaching was calling, and you'll find out that once you get that calling, you don't have much choice in life. You become a teacher and it kind of becomes your life. I loved teaching high school. I taught all the way from 8th through 12th grade, and I loved high school. I loved the content area. I like the junior high age, but the content for high school is so interesting, and I love the conversations that you're able to have with high schoolers. Why I particularly chose English, I had an amazing high school English teacher, and she was the reason that I went to school, and I wanted to be the reason that other students came to school. And I love literature. There's no better job.
So were you a double major in Spanish and English?
I was, yep. And then I spent a year in Spain to get some credit there and realized that I loved everything European and decided that I would definitely go back as much as I can. And I don't, because now I have my kids and they're kind of expensive. But I love history. I love all kinds of things. I love learning about architecture, and so that was one of the best things about living in Spain.
Mm-hmm. And what is your advice to first-year teachers?
Oh goodness, where should I start? My best advice to first-year teachers is to believe in yourself. Your first year is really hard. You question whether or not you can do it. You spend a lot of hours crying because it's a lot. It's very overwhelming, and students are difficult. Students today have a lot of need, and sometimes that overlaps with what you're trying to do in the classroom. But you have to just believe in yourself and do the best you can, and it all works out in the end, and you start to see your purpose.
And what's your favorite piece of literature to teach?
That's a wonderful question. Definitely love Shakespeare. I loved teaching Macbeth. I started as a theater major, and so I love that anyway. But I used to have my students read aloud, and I loved hearing how they would embrace the Shakespearean conversation and how they would practice the words, and then it would start to become easier, and they loved it. They loved doing, reader's theater and reading the parts and bringing themselves into the world of Shakespeare, and I love seeing that transformation. That was by far my favorite. Macbeth, definitely my favorite. Lots of action. Lots and lots of action, and the students love that because it is so full of mystique and intrigue and all of the things that they see today put back in Shakespeare's time, and it's really cool to see them draw those connections. I love that.
And you can have them dance around a cauldron.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've heard that you like King Arthur. Do you remember your first encounter with the Arthurian legend, whether it be in pop culture or not?
Absolutely. Monty Python was a big deal in my house growing up. I remember having it on VHS, and that's what I would watch when I was homesick. And I didn't realize it was a thing until I got older and started to realize what it was and started to understand the humor behind it. My mom was also an English major and loved books and loved reading, and those were the stories that she would read to us at night. And so that's when I first became introduced to it, and I sort of just kind of became obsessed with it because it was such a cool story, first of all. And I loved all of the movies that came out. I buy right into that. I love Sean Connery. I love all things King Arthur, watch every movie. But it's so interesting to me, the stories that are spin-offs and how it impacts lots of other different kinds of literature and other movies and all kinds of pop culture. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I agree. Do you remember your first King Arthur experience?
Well, I mean, I feel like everybody's seen the Disney Sword in the Stone,
Yep.
But like the first time that I really connected with King Arthur, there's the show, I'm not really sure which channel, but it's called Merlin.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, it's mostly centered around Merlin as like a young wizard and living with Arthur and Arthur going off into battle, and then there's Gaius, and there's everybody that you've heard of eating the actual old-fashioned King Arthur, and it's just, I loved it.
My very favorite was the Mists of Avalon. I don't know if you ever came across reading that. They also made it into like a miniseries, but it takes a very feminist point of view, which was interesting to me in college, and that's where I sort of started to study the women roles in the story and how they created this, and it's really cool. I highly recommend if you have never come across it. The movie's very good too. Yeah.
It's really interesting how Guinevere shifts across cultures.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're exactly right. not always the beautiful, willing princess that we know of, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Complicated.
See, tell us about your experience with King Arthur while you were in England.
I went back to England as an adult. My sister was studying abroad there, and so I went to visit. She's also an English major, it sort of runs in the family. But we decided that we definitely wanted to see where he was supposedly born and then also where he died. So we visited Tintagel Castle, which is this beautiful old ruins that you walk in and you feel this energy. It's interesting, there's this big drawbridge that you can walk across and, you know, moss covering rocks, and it's very peaceful. And then we also visited Glastonbury Abbey where he's supposedly buried, and they have a monument set up and a burial ground, and they believe it. They believe every bit of it, and this is absolutely where he was born, and this is absolutely where he is buried. And I love going to all of the villages in England, and everybody loves King Arthur, and they love him for different reasons, because everybody needs a hero, and everybody needs somebody to believe in, and I think that's really refreshing that that story has stayed alive for centuries, because everybody needs somebody to believe in, and it's a good story.
I mean, I used to believe it.
Well, you still do, because you're an English major, so you have to.
Yes. Why do you think Western culture is still enamored with the 1,000-year-old legend?
I think just because of that everybody needs a hero, and in society we don't get too many of those stories where, you know, chivalry is still alive, and you know, we have the romance and the mystery, and people are infatuated with it because of those reasons. Everybody wants to believe in something good, and, you know, somebody that does something for no purpose other than to love his people. You know, we don't get that very often. I think people really want to believe it, and it just stays alive because if you want it, it's there to believe in.
I feel like it's so nostalgic.
Mm-hmm.
Too. There's something to say about we want to go back to the good old days.
Oh yeah.
So
and there's a little bit of mystery that exists because is he or isn't he? And there's all of these old stories, you know, that date way back to, you know, 1300, and they think, well, maybe he was modeled after this person. So people will go on, you know, excursions in England looking for artifacts that will link him to somebody. So there's still that mystery of never quite knowing whether he existed in what capacity, and where did he actually live, and did he even actually live. So it's never actually been solved, and I think that mystery keeps it alive too. People always want to be the ones who discover, you know, that they found King Arthur, maybe.
And is the consensus that he's just a molding of a bunch of different rulers, or what are they thinking?
I wish I could give you specifics, but there's the one story that they've really said this is probably what it is. It was an early king forever ago, definitely not in the same capacity, but they find a lot of comparison and a lot of links to some of the stories that were written that possibly may be modeled after this particular king. Nothing that's really like, oh my God, that's who he is, but very, very loosely linked after an actual person that existed is what the consensus there is.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe, maybe not, in other words.
Okay. What book are you reading right now, or what show are you watching?
My daughter is an 8th grader, and she'll be embarrassed that I said so, but I've actually gotten hooked on Vampire Diaries. I love supernatural. I'm interested in all of the mystery there. I love learning about ghosts and all of that. And I believe every bit of it. It absolutely exists. But that's the show I'm watching right now on Netflix, and I watch it with my daughters. And you know, I like being in touch with what junior high and high school students are watching and what they believe in, because it really forms what you will do as teachers, because part of your job is figuring out what they are connected with and what they're interested in. So then therefore that carries over to my job here at the university, is to teach you how to ask those kinds of questions and how to stay connected. So, and it's cool. I like it.
I think that's a way to kind of, if you're reading a story, you can be like, oh, this same sort of thing happens in the Vampire Diaries, and this sort of thing happens in this. So it makes it more relevant.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the students are not motivated by the things that we tell them they ought to be. They're motivated by what they find relevant, like you said, and what they find connection with. And you know, we have to accept that. Gone are the days of us just saying, this is important, you need to learn it because it's Shakespeare. They're okay with that to a certain extent, but then they want to see how it affects their lives, and it does. I mean, everything that it's ever written is based on Shakespeare, so it's pretty cool for them to be able to find some of those similarities. Yeah. And as far as reading, I haven't read a non-textbook in so many years, I couldn't even tell you. I think the last book that I read was The Help. That really, really resonated with me. I loved it. I can't really talk about it or I'll cry, but I loved it. Yeah.
Macbeth or Hamlet?
Macbeth.
I agree. Just based on principle, that's probably the first play by Shakespeare I really liked. So I think Hamlet has a more exciting plot line.
Yeah.
But
Hamlet's awfully whiny, and I don't like. I mean, it like okay, you know what I mean? It kind of just goes on and on and on. And Macbeth is a little bit, but he does things, and I mean, every move that he makes is like, whew. And Hamlet, it kind of feels like
he's taking
let's
forever
get there already.
to
Yeah,
make a decision.
make a decision. Are you or are you not? Yeah.
So is cheesecake pie or cake?
Pie. Definitely.
Even though it has cake
The only
in the
kind of
name?
cake is chocolate cake. That's the only kind of cake.
What about vanilla cake?
No chocolate. Vanilla cake doesn't exist in my world.
I do not believe.
There's no reason.
If you're going to eat cake, might as well eat chocolate cake because might as
It's
well
the best.
enjoy it if it's bad for you.
Exactly. If you're gonna have cake, have the best cake.
Right.
If I gave you the gift of a full-sized elephant, where would you put it?
Well, our yard has a trampoline and a shed, so I would definitely put it on the side of the house that has the window into the little boys' room so that they would be able to enjoy that, because I just don't know where else I would do that with that sort of thing.
See, when Ashley first showed me these questions, I was like, I'd put it in my room and not talk about it.
Very clever.
Elephant in
Very
the
clever.
room. Good job.
It's a good carry that response around for a while. You'll never know when you might need that.
So what came first, the chicken or the egg?
The chicken.
I agree.
Just did.
If you had to guess, what is the most played song in your iTunes library?
Or Spotify.
Anything Bob Dylan, honestly. I love poetry. When I used to teach poetry, I would teach Bob Dylan in almost every sense of anything he's ever written. Very favorite, It's Not Dark Yet, is one of his later songs. But I love the way he writes. I love the way he sings. And my parents, I mean, we grew up with him. My dad was an old hippie, and he used to sit in the basement and listen to record players, and that's the kind of music that I grew up with, so it never left.
And he recently won a Nobel Prize for Literature, right?
Which is awesome, because he's a true poet.
So Coke or Pepsi?
Oh, Coke Zero. Super good, and you can drink an entire case of it, and there's no calories, so
What's
perfect.
Oh, that's the zero part. Okay. I was like, zero what?
Zero sugar.
What is the best type of cereal?
Count Chocula. Only released at Halloween time, so that makes it extra special.
Yeah. All those limited time things. Yeah.
Like eggnog. Not good in
No.
practice, very good at Christmas.
At Christmas time, yep.
I don't like it. It tastes like bubble gum. I hate bubble gum. Oh. How much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood?
Oh, if I had my mind straight, I would finish that off for you, but we do this rhyme at home all the time, and Ivan, my 5-year-old, says none because it just wouldn't be very healthy. We have a lot of health food conversations in our house, but wood is not healthy to eat.
What I always imagined with the whole like chucking wood is just like a tiny beaver-like creature just having logs and just going meh. like
Yeah.
chucking them.
Chucking them.
And that's healthy because that's exercise.
That is very true, yeah.
I work out. Thank you for watching English Club TV. Goodbye.
Bye.